Okay, that's enough of that dumb shit. Until my channel really gets big, I'm gonna at least do one black conservative a day. So, get ready for these dumb motherfuckers. I did that idiot Officer Tatum yesterday, and now I'm doing this girl. And I feel like I need to say something because I said in a different video that's kind of processing and being edited. I feel like this video is shorter, so it'll be easier to edit and process and whatnot. It's like, okay, I grew up being a so-called black nerd myself. I know what it's like to feel excluded. I know what it's like to get talked about, to get into unnecessary fights, and to feel distant and misunderstood by people that's in your same race because you found different outlets like watching anime, gaming, collecting action figures, skateboarding, or listening to other music. Like I'm bona fide down. I grew up watching like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto. I love, Transformers. Like I collect toys and shit like that. I'm different and I know what it's like to not necessarily fit in with people. I also listen to rock music. Like, I got on the MDC shirt right here. I also listen to like JFA, Youth Brigade, No Effects, Bad Religion, and even some of the I know about all the the contemporary emo stuff. Like we could talk about like 3 Days Grace or Avenged Sevenfold and stuff like that all day. Talk to you about 30 Seconds to Mars and whatnot. But the point that I'm getting at is just because you different and you fake, and I know what it's like to face this. That feeling of feeling rejected by your own people, but never let those feelings turn into hatred and bigotry against your own people because a lot of black people are the way that they are for a reason. Black people are not some so-called inferior race that are just more ignorant and inclined towards crime than white people and stuff like that. Black people have had a very complicated history coming up in America, and a lot of things are the way they are because America did its best, both especially in the South, but also in the North, to fuck black people over, from things like the policing policies to we could talk about redlining, we could talk about employment discrimination, we can talk about socioeconomic factors like things economically like lowering things like Social Security or making it harder to get or make things like food stamps harder to get hurts blacks worse than it does whites. You can ask my best friend Lee Atwater about that one. My point being at the end of the day is that just because you're different from everybody else, don't become this type of person. Always ask questions, do other research. And I don't think that black people are the way that they are because, they just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And I got to do a lot of priming because I know it's a lot of young, black men and women that could be taken in, that are, so-called nerdy, they gothic or whatever, that could be taken in with somebody with this kind of aesthetic. And I don't want you to be taken in by somebody like this who's going to lie to you and make money off your sadness, your despair, and your misunderstanding about politics. You got to keep in mind, like I said, a few minutes ago, a lot of these people that are committing crimes and shit like that, or that were making fun of you, didn't grow up in good households. A lot of these people grew up not having anything to eat. A lot of these people grew up watching, their mom getting abused or something like that. A lot of these people grew up being exposed to drugs and alcohol or sex at an early age. And this is just a byproduct of African Americans growing up in worse socioeconomic conditions. So don't give up on your people. Always love your people at the end of the day. And I'm not telling you not to defend yourself. Somebody come up to you on some BS trying to, bully you for, watching anime in class or looking at your Yu-Gi-Oh cards or whatever. You step up and defend yourself. But what you don't do is become this person where you get so angry and you misunderstand so much about life that you grow to hate your own people. though. Let's see what this grifting bitch has to say.
What's up, everyone? My name's Gothix, and today's video is going to be a follow-up for my previous one where a few of you asked me to expand upon why I don't support the Black Lives Matter organization.
Nah, this also means movement, but I can tell you why, everybody, especially the people who I were previously addressing, is because, a lot of racist white people and, conservative outlets will pay a lot of money for a black person to say racist things that they want to hear.
I actually ended up writing a 4-page document on my reasonings of why I don't support the org. So I'm going to try to fit in as much detail as I can into a very small video. So I'm going to be looking over here mostly just because there's so much to unpack. So let me first start off by reiterating once again that I agree with this sentiment.
Give me a second. That didn't look like no damn 480p at least. I live in an area with bad internet connection.
That Black lives do in fact matter. I do not agree with the organization that Black Lives Matter. And I feel like it's very, it's important to mention those differences because the response that I normally get from BLM supporters is that they are, they're not supporting the organization and rather they are marching for the sentiment. But realistically, it's the organization right now who's in control. So,
No, it is not. The Black Lives Matter organization does not control how people protest, when people protest, or when people decide to organize. It's many different groups of people. Like, in fact, in Detroit, we got, like, Detroit Will Breathe, that independently organize outside of the Black Lives Matter organization.
Let me first also go into what I think BLM, the organization, is, and I believe it has less to do with Black lives and more to do with politics. So if you're paying attention,
You airheaded son of a bitch. Look, man, or look, lady. Black civil rights is a political movement. Black people are victims of political persecution by the state or by state actors, often the police. So, of course, Black Lives Matter, the organization and movement, it would be a political organization and is a political movement. Like, what the fuck else is it gonna be? You think the people out there saying white lives matter, you think that's not political? Probably so.
you'll notice that BLM tends to pop up around election time, or at least have a stronger presence around election time.
That's because they're trying to convince people to vote in a way that will actually help Black Americans and furthermore working Americans. And if this is referring to 2020, I feel like that's more complicated than just being about Black lives. And I guess I'm gonna give my little sentiment about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I feel like Wikipedia does it justice because if you scroll down, it goes to class war. As an article that you can read up on Wikipedia. But let me say this. For the first time in years, working class Americans were able to stay home, breathe, think, get their bills paid, and just look at the world around them in the state that we were living in. And after 4 years of a proto-fascist government, seeing Nazis march on the streets, seeing workers' rights being trampled on, people were upset and tired of being treated the way that they were. And during the Black Lives Matter protests, you didn't just see people protesting about, for Black lives. You see people, especially later on, talking about workers' rights, or, LGBT people had a nice contingent in, in the Black Lives Matter protests. Is because people got tired of the oppressive system that we were living in during from 2016 to 2020. But you can even argue even before that, because a lot of millennials and generation, a lot of Zoomers and stuff, I believe also Generation X, were tired of getting paid like shit, treated like shit, and government that just threw you out there and didn't care about you. So that's my sentiment about the Black Lives Matter movement. And it just so happened in 2020 to happen during the election year. But with my bullshit aside, George Floyd died in an election year. He was killed by a police officer. And it took Trump days to condemn the police officer as being in the wrong for the murder. So that's why, they popped up so much in 2020. Not to mention him mishandling the pandemic and stuff like that. We can get into a lot of reasons why all of a sudden around 2020 Black Lives Matter shows up. But if we talking generically any election year or any election, it's because Black Lives Matter are leftists, socialists, social democrats, and anarchists, and they're going to band together to promote, if not a social democrat candidate, they would promote a centrist democrat candidate that would at least somewhat govern the way that will help people. And that's why.
There was actually a recent study done by Pew that shows the number of Twitter posts that mention hashtag Black Lives Matter saw an exponential increase in 2016 and then again in 2020. But mind you,
that's because people were scared of a racist being voted into office.
There were 59 fatal shootings involving unarmed blacks between 2017 and 2019.
Unarmed black people. I'm not going to be so nitpicky, but dude, the way that she just said blacks like that, like, dude, come on, say black people. You black.
So we already know that the front-facing agenda of BLM is police brutality against black folks.
Which is a real
phenomenon.
phenomenon.
So if that's the case, I can't help but wonder why these cases were not on anyone's radar. So then it poses the question, does BLM care about black lives all the time? Or just around election time?
What the fuck is this bitch on, bro? Come on. It's because they come up around election year because first of all, they're around all the time. So don't give me this shit. Black Lives Matter, organizations or the organizations that protest under that banner are always organizing and participating in different functions that we don't necessarily see or that don't necessarily make it on the news. And they always care about black people getting killed by the police or disproportionately living in poverty. They don't start caring now and stop caring later. They always cared. And technically it started under President Obama. So it doesn't really matter who's the president. Black Lives Matter is going to organize either way.
So you're probably thinking, okay, that this doesn't really prove anything, right? Hashtag social media doesn't really prove much. Okay, let's try this on for size. On the Black Lives Matter website, they specifically state that Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention. Pay attention to the word ideological because we're going to go back to that later in the video. The next thing that I found interesting is when you go to their donate page, you'll see that all of their donations are being processed through Act Blue, which is a fundraising platform that processes payments specifically for Democratic candidates and organizations. And
that's of course, because voting Democrat is a nice way to slow down the effects of racism in the United States of America and make it more of a balanced country. Mind you, I'm not defending the entire Democrat Party and saying that it's a lot of shoulder-rubbing good boys and good girls in there. But at the end of the day, voting Democrat is a good, in funding their platform, funding their campaigns, it's a nice way to get at least a little bit of egalitarianism.
course, some of you might be like, okay,
So
well,
what if
if
they was going to Republicans? Would you still be bitching about it?
BLM is a political movement, that's okay because we still want Trump out of office. Fair enough argument. I know that a lot of people don't like the guy, whether they have an informed opinion on him or just hate him because it's trendy. But consider
Stood against the second largest civil rights movement in history. Say, dude, I can't even go over mismanaging the pandemic, refusing to condemn neo-Nazis and neo-fascists several times, making racist statements against Latino people and Arab people for no reason. Like, he's done so much harm to this country. Oh, grab by the pussy. Don't forget stuff like that. Trying to under the table, pull the rug under the feet of gay men and women by trying to make it so they can't adopt children. So, people have a lot of reasons, from his rhetoric to his policies, to not like him.
this for a second. If it's proven that BLM has been using its organization to raise money for Biden, you'd have to ask yourself, why isn't he capable of raising money on his own? Think about it. If Americans...
Every candidate has campaign donations, so you gonna sit up here and tell me that you don't think like Turning Point USA and all the rest of the motherfuckers, the Daily Wire and all them other dirty motherfuckers wasn't donating to Trump?
really do love Biden as much as everyone says they do, surely they would be more inclined
It's
to
not about loving him. It's about him being better than Trump. Biden was the bare minimum. Most people wanted Bernie Sanders. But since he dropped out and pretty much got screwed, everybody supported Joe Biden, which was the better alternative, man. I would rather have somebody that maintains the status quo and at least tries to balance workers against rich capitalists, and who's socially progressive, even if he just speaks it, than somebody that's actively trying to halt progress and make life worse for everybody.
Campaign in the first place, right? But hypothetically speaking, if this were actually true, obviously I know Biden can't control how BLM decides to use their donations. However, it is a little bit interesting to see how racial equality is the focal point of his campaign all of a sudden, while Biden and the left-wing media refuse to condemn...
It's always been, dude. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, racial equality has been a part of the Democratic platform for about 50 years. And I'm not saying that they perfect on it, but at least they pay lip service to racism being a problem in this country.
Any of the riots and looting until they realized how much it was hurting the polls.
The rioting has to stop. Chris, as you know and I know, it's showing up in the polls.
Go fuck yourself. This, okay, we know rioting is bad. We know the riots were bad. People shouldn't riot, but we shouldn't be simple-minded about it. We should ask the question, what could drive people into the mindset where they feel like they have to riot instead of just bitching about it and acting snarky?
Mm-hmm. It's showing up in focus groups.
Which makes it seem like black votes rank higher than black lives. Let's continue on to something else that I found.
Dude, what is wrong with you? You trying to yeah, I hate this, bro. And it's like we gonna go over Blair White video that's similar to this. What is this willful ignorance that all you conservatives have? So you're gonna downplay and ignore all the racist shit that the Republican Party does and pretend like none of that stuff happened or something? What the fuck is wrong with you, girl? And we talking about, 50 to 60 years of racist dog whistling and anti-worker rights legislation. Which also, these economic policies hurt blacks worse than whites. But, I'm sure the rest of the audience get what I mean. Like, come on, man. Like, you just gonna really play stupid? Like, you don't understand why black people don't vote Republican. We got more than a good reason. Not only are they racist, like I just said, and they cozy up to white supremacist gangs and militias, they also promote economic policies that hurt black people.
Really concerning on the Black Lives Matter website. On their What We Believe page, it states that they want to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure.
That's happening whether you like it or not, because people don't want to get married anymore for many sociological reasons that would be a whole video. But no matter how much you bitch and moan about it, people are not going to just all of a sudden out of nowhere start getting married again because you complained about it in a video.
Nuclear family pretty much means a couple and their dependent child working together as a basic social unit. Basically one of those cheesy stock photos that you get with the smiling family just like posing for pictures at Sears. Basically that's what it is. Getting rid of the nuclear family doesn't make much sense in the context that it's being pushed to the public. Compared to whites, Asians, and Hispanics, Black Americans rank the highest when it comes to children being born out of wedlock or children before marriage.
Nah, don't do this. Hey, the CDC says even though black parents don't necessarily be married, they're more likely, like black fathers, you know, this whole thing about black fathers not being there with the child is a myth. Even though they may not be legally married, the father is usually in the household. They bathe the child, they read to the child, they play with the child, and spend time with the child as much as white fathers do. So, she's doing, like I said, the Officer Tatum thing where she's selectively lying and trying to make it seem like black people are just having children out of wedlock for no reason. You know that classic racist stereotype about the black father leaving, which again does not happen as often as she trying to make it seem.
70% of Black Americans in the country operate with only one parent in the home, which is a huge difference compared to the 1960s, where that number was only around 30%. There are a lot of studies out right now that suggest the reason for this is a mixture of cultural influence as well as the welfare state. If you want me to dive deeper...
Not really. And also I will say the welfare state, yes. Maybe we should fix the welfare state. We should expand it to make it so that you still qualify if it's a dual income household.
Into that, let me know in the comments and I'll make a different video on that topic. But in any case, knowing what we know, one could ask, why would BLM want to further dismantle the black family? Of course, when I spit these facts and ask this exact question, I usually get the response that what I'm saying is a right-wing argument and therefore shouldn't be taken seriously.
It's not even a right-wing argument. It's just nonsense, dude. Like, honestly, because they talking about breaking apart the nuclear family and stuff like that. It's because this because like I said, I can get into that in a whole like separate video about like feminism and, you know, marriage and how it can harm, you know, like how this obligation to fit into a particular mold, have this many children, you know, do this and that this exact way, like how harmful, you know, trying to live up to that can really be for people, and how much harder it is because people have you know, oh god, let me text her real fast. But yeah, it can be harmful because it's something that people can't live up to because people just people just can't make enough money or have enough time to live up to that nuclear family stereotype. Sorry, I wish I could have made those thoughts a little better, but I'm texting right now. Let me see. I'm gonna say please don't interrupt me. That way it ain't disrespectful. But anyways, yeah. For many like socio-economic reasons, like the nuclear family is harmful.
But don't let me convince you, okay? How about we just listen to what Don Lemon had to say back when he was an objective journalist?
More than 72% of children in the African American community are born...
Maybe Don Lemon learned more information like the CDC data that I cited, saying that even though they're not necessarily married, that black fathers partake in their child lives as much as white fathers. And this whole thing about black fathers being these people that are just not there for their children is a myth.
Out of wedlock. That means absent fathers. And the studies show that lack of a male role model is an express train right to prison. And the cycle continues. So please, black folks, pay close attention to the hip-hop and rap culture that glorifies everything I just mentioned. Thug.
That's really simple-minded of Don Lemon to say. I will say that. But like I said, maybe Don took in more information about how things work in society. And also, speaking of gangster rap, you want to know what race of people consumes this gangster rap and garbage-ass trap music more than any other race of people? It ain't black people.
And reprehensible behavior. A culture that is making a lot of people rich, just not you.
Furthermore, despite what left-wing media or LeBron James has to say, black people are not being hunted in the streets. Actually,
do I really have to pull up, like, you know, like the FBI statistics about, man, know what? Usually I don't do this. Like, let me see. Like, this shit got to the point where I was watching a PBS Frontline documentaries where they had a gang squad going around looking for guns, and they would just pull random people off the street for no reason, and they had to disband the group because they were violating people's civil rights. You know, even though this is just New York City, that's the largest city in America. Wow. I don't know, man. It looks like to me that, you know, especially in New York City, that there's a little bit of a problem where black people are stopped more often than white people. Let me try to find, I wonder if this is a thing. I doubt that this data exists, but because I don't know if they studied it or not, but because I don't know if it's you know, recorded for Detroit, Michigan, but let me tell you, I done had my ass handcuffed and searched and told that I matched the description of somebody that robbed somebody. I knew I wasn't gonna find it. So there is a problem with where black people are walking down the street or doing something completely unrelated to any criminal activity, and they get pulled over or they get stopped and frisked. Like, that is a problem in America where, I don't know, like, I mean, she's also a woman, but it's like, have you, like, never been outside in a black neighborhood? Do you, like, not have any black friends? Because the only way you can think this is, number one, selectively lying and choosing the data that you want to hear, and also just being willfully ignorant. Now, I'm not saying every black person has had an experience with the police, but just about everybody has. But at the end of the day, there is data showing that black people are more likely to get pulled over, and black people are more likely to get stopped and frisked by the police. So there's a problem with how the institution of policing looks at African American and Latino individuals.
more white people are killed every year by the hands of police officers.
Thank you for lying like that. This is one that I got really good. Like, I got really good because I think it's like It's more white people than black people in the United States. When people say this, it's not being proportional. A black person proportionate being about 13 million, and white people being, I think, like 130 million in America. Let me see. Because I forgot how it goes, but how many white people in America? I mean, amount of people in America by race. Because a black person is 2.5 times likely to get killed by the police than a white person if you proportion it correctly. And I feel like at the end of the day, let me see, non-Hispanic white, yeah. Like, it's not saying the number that I'm looking for, but yeah, if non-Hispanic white people are about almost 60% of the population, and blacks are, it doesn't drop down some according to the census, but it's still about 13 percent of the population. Proportionally, a black person is 2.5 more times likely 2.5 times more likely to get killed by a police officer than a white person. That is again very selective lying. Like, of course, it seems like that, just if you put it on a paper or you type it up, like, yeah, because there's more white people in America, there's more white people getting killed. But at the end of the day, if you proportion it correctly, and I think there's even a video that I can link under this. But yeah, what I was gonna say, man, fucking text message. But yeah, if you proportion it correctly, you will see that a black person is 2.5 times more likely to get killed by the police. And then even at the end of the day, I don't like the fact that my fellow working class brother, my my white working class brethren, whether they be homeless, poor, and they going through a lot of the same and similar situations that we go through, are getting killed by the police either. There's nowhere written in Black Lives Matter or any social justice movement at any time where we're saying that we are excluding white people from our movement, and the deaths of poor white people or anybody at the hands of the police should be excluded and not talked about.
And now you may be thinking, okay, but blacks only make up for 13% of the population. And while you are right, we also have to acknowledge that blacks also commit 50% of the crimes in America.
Why is that, bitch? It's like I said earlier, from slavery all the way up to now, black people were subject to a lot of different socioeconomic conditions that caused the I'm not gonna say caused us, because I never committed a crime and I don't got a criminal record, so I couldn't say that caused a lot of black Americans to commit crimes. Just being simple-minded about it and saying pull yourself up by the bootstraps and black people need to get their act together is not solving any of the socioeconomic conditions that black people have to live through. Like schools being funded by property tax. Dumb shit like that. Or mandatory minimum sentences, 3 strike laws. So, all this nonsense that she's spouting off talking about, black people commit 50% of the crime in America, is a reason. So yeah, we can accept that, but we also need to talk about the reasons why. And we shouldn't use the fact, like I said earlier, that of course there's more white people that get killed a year by cops, but when you proportion it correctly, a black person is 2.5 more times likely to get killed by a police officer. So yeah.
And if we're going into specifics, black men make up 6% of the population yet commit the majority of crimes. This tells me that if a particular demographic is committing crimes at a much higher rate, then obviously that specific demographic is going to be...
No, that tells me that there are some socioeconomic conditions that's causing those people to have to commit crime. Not that my own people are ignorant or some bullshit which you about to spill out of your mouth.
likely to have more encounters with the police. Let's take a look at New York,
Because
for
black
example.
neighborhoods are also over police. You're more likely to see more police cars in a black neighborhood like mine than a white neighborhood like the one I'm sure that you live in.
3% of the population is white,
like,
while black...
You will see more police cars and patrols in like South Central Los Angeles than you would in Beverly Hills.
Blacks only make up for 22%. However, when we compare this data to the number of homicides, whites commit only 3% of the murders, whereas blacks commit 62% of the murders.
And it's a reason why, you dumb bitch. Like, you literally, like, dude, I'm starting to, like, I was kind of being laid back with this video, but she being so snarky and, antagonistic towards her own people and just refused to take in any information about the unique socioeconomic conditions that black men and black women have to live through that could possibly cause them to commit these crimes. Like, it's ridiculous, man. Like, it's a reason why. Like, black people are not just some genetically inferior people that just commit crime because, we feel like it. Things are definitely more complicated than that.
When it's all broken down, this information contradicts the narrative that police brutality is the leading cause of death for black men in America. And this is the exact narrative that has a lot of black Americans pissed off with the BLM organization. Because from a parent's perspective that lost their child...
No, the only reason why a black person would be pissed off at the Black Lives Matter organization or movement is because they watch right-wing ideologues like you who selectively lie about statistics or just say statistics with a snarky-ass face and voice and not explain any of the unique socioeconomic conditions that black people have to live through. So they got the impression that it's something wrong with black people instead of it be something being wrong with the way that we live in this country in general.
Gang violence, I think it's pretty insulting to say that black on black...
Why don't you tell your butt buddy Nixon, go ask him why he started the drug war. Like, a lot of these homicides you've seen is due to the drug war.
Black crime is not as important.
It's because a lot of young black men, unfortunately, they want a get-rich-quick scheme. Because it's like this, like, I don't know if this bitch knows, because like I said, you just, like, and it's like, even though to an extent, I didn't go to college, I got a high school diploma, and I got a good job. But I know what a lot of people, when they was going to these underfunded schools, like, what that makes you feel like. When you got teachers that don't care about you, when your neighborhood doesn't have any investment in it, when you don't have any programs to help you with disabilities, you wind up giving up and turn into crime. Not to mention, like I said earlier in this video, where a lot of people can grow up being exposed by, whether it be peer pressure or, just grow up around a lot of gang violence or drugs or sex. So people are not just giving up on life. People are growing up in terrible circumstances. And the best way to fix these circumstances is to invest in black communities or just poor communities in general, because it's not just a black phenomenon. It's a lot of, white neighborhoods who wind up with, like, meth dealing gangs and shit like that. Like, a lot of Nazis deal meth and stuff like that. Not saying that all white people who deal meth are Nazis. I'm just referring to, like, the Aryan Brotherhood and shit. Or Confederate gangs that do it, or motorcycle gangs that do it. But what I'm getting at is that somebody growing up poor, regardless of what race they are, whether it's black, Latino, white, Asian, Arab, they growing up poor, or they growing up around peer pressure and being poor, makes them more likely to commit crimes. And the only way to fix this is to invest in our communities. Not give up on them and say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
The 1% of police shootings that occur. Now, I'm a firm believer in self-ownership, and I would rather we do something to prevent Black people from committing crimes in the first place rather than
like make sure that they get a good education and have food on the table every day.
reacting to the excessive force by police officers. Both are wrong, and I have no issues acknowledging that 7 bullets to the back is excessive. But the majority of police shootings that are highlighted this year by BLM all have something in common. The victim had a connection to criminal acts.
And it doesn't fucking matter, dog. That's another thing. Just because somebody committed a crime. I mean, look, I believe in self-defense as much as the next person over. If you pull a gun on a cop or you run at a cop with a knife or some shit like that, I feel bad for you because you might have mental health problems, or you might be angry or not thinking or whatnot. And I believe that, yeah, the cop should defend his or her life, or their life. But people that are trying to run away, people who pulling out phones, you got people talking about I thought it was the taser, and it's like, I guess at the root of this, it doesn't matter if somebody committed a crime. It doesn't matter if they sold or bought drugs. It doesn't matter if they was selling cigarettes or alcohol or weed, or if they stole something, or if they look like somebody, or if it looked like they was grabbing something that they didn't have. The point is, these people were killed by the police and they were unarmed. The police are supposed to be there to arrest people and assess the situation, not kill people. Now, if somebody is an active shooter or a gunman, or they pull out a weapon against a police officer, I can understand why that officer would draw their weapon and defend, their life. But a lot of these people were unarmed, and it doesn't matter what crime they committed. Just because somebody committed a crime does not mean they deserve to die for it.
Funding the police, I feel, would put these types of communities at risk because we're not tackling the root issue.
Go fuck yourself. That's not what defund the police means. Defund the police means take those armored personnel carriers and M6. For real. It means takes funding from the police budget and invest it in housing and schooling and social welfare programs. That's what defund the police mean. Defund the police does not mean what is she talking about? Cause I don't know what she's about to say, but whatever she's about to say, that's not what defund the police is. Defund the police is essentially take this money and use it for social welfare programs. Oh yeah, open up mental health centers or community centers instead of having the police respond to mental health situations. Have social workers respond. Have social workers in the school. Make sure it's affordable housing in the neighborhood. Make sure that a lot of charities can exist, and get donations, so they can give people free food and stuff like that. Make sure the state especially can give people more food stamp benefits and stuff. That's what people mean by defund the police, is just take that money and use it for some form of social welfare.
There's no doubt that police reform needs to be done, but there are countless other cases that have been documented of police brutality towards other races, including people like Justine Damon, who was killed by the same police department surrounding the case of George Floyd.
And it doesn't matter. That don't make it right, dude. Nobody is fucking saying that. It's just that black people are more likely to be the victim than white people. Nobody is going around saying like, oh, if a white person is killed by the police, who cares? Nobody has ever said that.
God. Let's tackle the last topic and buckle up for this one. So remember when I said that Black Lives Matter is an ideological and political intervention? Well, a resurfaced interview of one of the co-founders has her admitting that her and her colleagues are trained Marxists.
We actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers.
It's all about freedom of speech and freedom of expression until you fuckers find somebody that y'all disagree with.
Are trained Marxists. We are super.
And then, by the way, people who are living through oppression are more likely to adopt radical political positions, like, you know, Marxism, socialism, or anarchism.
Versed on sort of ideological theories.
I'll be honest, I had no fucking idea what the hell that meant, so I had to Google it. And it turns out Marxism is a political and economic theory of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, later developed by their followers to form the basis for theory and practice of communism. What? So this led me to take a look at the Communist Manifesto, which was co-written by Karl Marx, and inside it states the following. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. So pretty much, yeah, we're communists, and we don't care who knows.
I don't.
The manifesto goes on to say that they openly declare their ends can be obtained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions.
Yes, because why should we have to live like this? Why should we have to pay? You know, because, you know, what they're referring to is, why do we live in a society where a few people that hold the wealth pretty much dictates and controls the lives of the working class people and the poor and homeless? That's what they're referring to. We don't have to live like this.
Which basically means we're going to do what we want, and we're going to do it by any means necessary. So what exactly do they mean when they say all existing social conditions? According to...
They mean capitalism, dude. And there's been, you know, and it's not even just, you know, from so many standpoints, you know, looking at neoliberal capitalism in a way that it even exists in 2022. And you can't look at my face and tell me that there's no flaws in this system. This so-called system where anybody can be rich. This so-called system that has the richest country in history, that has homeless people. This system where if they can't sell food, they'll burn it or dispose of it or throw bleach on it. A system where restaurants lock up their garbage cans so homeless people can't get the food out. A system where about like 60% of your time is spent working. A system where most of our government, both Republicans and Democrats, especially centrist Democrats, are controlled by wealthy people donating to PACs. So yes, there is fundamental problems with the way that we live, and we should question the authorities around us and not just be willfully ignorant saying everything is okay, I should just work harder. Not to mention, it shows that if you born poor, you're more likely to stay poor. And it's not your fault for not working hard enough. It's that the system maintains hegemony for people at the top.
To the manifesto, this includes individuality, personal property, religion, history, and even family.
Not even necessarily religion. Jesus was an anti-capitalist. Jesus didn't like gambling. Jesus never sold anything.
Disrupting the nuclear family kind of hits a little bit different now, huh? Okay. It's also worth noting that many BLM supporters are knowingly pushing a communist agenda, so I'm assuming that these folks actually did their research into the organization. Regardless, I fail to see how communism
is... And I'll also say that everybody protesting in the Black Lives Matter movement are not necessarily communist, socialists, or anarchists. It's people out there that just saw what was going on TV and that was like, yeah, I'm going to go out here and march. That stuff was fucked up. It could really be as simple as that. And then what's wrong with people being exposed to more ideologies and a different way of thinking about life?
The answer, considering how many immigrants flee from socialist states to live in America, which, by the way, Marxists often describe
What socialist states? There are no socialist states on the planet. There are none. Except Rojava.
As the first step of communism. Okay, so we're almost at the end of this video, but before I go, I wanted to leave you with one more reason that I'm not on board with BLM. And it has a lot to do with the knee-jerk reactions when it comes to the news surrounding police brutality and how it encourages many of its supporters to abandon critical thinking.
It's not knee-jerk, it's a constant fucking problem. Where you see on TV, you know, at least once or twice a year, or somebody could know somebody. And like I said, because the worst part about the shootings and killings and stuff is the stuff that don't blow up nationwide. And people are fucking tired of it. So people are not being knee-jerk reaction towards the police. People are tired of the shit that the police do.
Thinking, while automatically assuming that all fatal police shootings are racially motivated. An example of this would be the Michael Brown case. Hands up, don't shoot is a slogan and gesture that originated from the shooting in 2014 and was later adopted by BLM. A witness claimed that Brown was surrendering and had his hands up before he was shot. However, the Department of Justice later released reports that revealed that Brown never surrendered, the witness lied, and the shooting was ultimately justified.
And I don't believe this.
Recently with the Dion K case, where protesters took to the streets long before the report was released. But looking at the body cam footage, however, you can see clearly that Dion was brandishing a gun before he was shot by police officers. And again, I'm not denying that there are actually racially motivated police killings out there.
To that little kid, Adam Toledo, then.
However, I think it's very dangerous to impulsively react without considering every detail. So that's the end of this video. I hope I provided some clarity as to why I don't